All right, everybody. So we're gonna do a quick demonstration on the fuel gauge now. Unfortunately, again, it's kind of hard to check points on this one with just one hand, so we're gonna skip that. We did it on the temp sensor, so same concept and everything. Let's quick before we dive into this. Let's take a look at the wiring diagram. So for the fuel gauge, in theory from start, or initially from the factory and everything, this is the way things should be wired. 12 volt coming over to point I, which I assume is ignition. The internal voltage regulator steps that down to 5 volts. The gauge runs off 5 volts, and point A supplies 5 volts to the temperature gauge. The S is going to the sending unit in the fuel tank, which is grounded. We're going to kind of take a different approach, as you guys have picked up on, and instead of supplying 12 volts to the gauge directly, we're going to go to this external regulator, which is on our little demonstration board that we walked you through, and 5 volts comes out. So I'm walking you through this because we're actually going to connect to point A on our gauge and not I. So when we take a look at the back of this gauge, you'll notice, if we can see that on the camera, that I have these labeled. I is the right post, A is the left post, so we are connecting our power to point A. The green wire coming off of it is, again, our sending unit wire. The sending unit wire is routed back to our rheostat, which is acting as our sending unit, which has a ground to it. Our sending unit's got to have a ground. Then our gauge has a ground as well. We need to make sure we don't lose that ground. And it looks like it's getting close. We'll be careful here. So yeah, that should be it. So we're going to change our dial here to be completely empty, which is basically where the gauge should start whenever there's no power supplied to it. We are roughly at empty. And again, I've had this gauge apart several times, so it may not be completely lined up anymore. And I do believe there is an adjustment screw on the side of this. I have not figured that out yet, but as I do, hopefully I'll make another video for you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and provide power to this, and we should see this not move much at all if it does. So there we go, we have power to it. So you can see the needle is pretty stationary. I don't think it's moving at all. Again, we go back to our known ohms reading. 73 ohms was an empty tank, which is roughly where we started. Again, the gauge is slightly off because of my monkeying around, but if we dial this into 23 ohms, that should be half a tank. Let's go ahead and dial this indicator right here around to 23 ohms, and our needle should start to move. I know this is weird for most of us to see a functional fuel gauge, but this proves it is possible. It's just a matter of making sure we get it installed exactly the same as we have it mocked up here. And of course, the other part on this is to make sure you have a functional sending unit in the vehicle, which we're going to try to walk through that in another video as well. So you can see we're roughly to half a tank. We'll go ahead and dial this into the 10 ohms. Would look like we're kind of stabilized there. 10 ohms should be a full tank, and that's really where the magic is at. I've seen gauges move a little bit. I've never seen it move all the way, but if we go ahead and dial it into 10 ohms, you can see that the needle continues to climb. So what's interesting is this gauge and the temperature gauge we've used for demonstration, I actually believe to be bad. I've since removed them, replaced them with another set of gauges. They didn't respond either. I don't know if I've burnt those up or not, so that's why I went this route and started just taking step by step. I'm going to pull those out. I actually have a new set of gauges that I may use, may not, depending on if the ones installed are truly bad or not. I'm going to test those to see if they're bad, and if they're not, we're going to figure out what's going on using our little demonstration board. So, all right, everybody. Well, that's kind of how that works. I'll go ahead and just for grins again, I'll go ahead and just slip this back down to half a tank. Watch this swing the other way. there we go. We have movement. All right. Thanks, everybody.